It is Monday, November 14th here in Draft Shark Studios in Rochester, New York. Welcome to the Week 10 Recap Pod. I'm your host, Matt Schaff. And with me again is mein Deutsch friend, Adam Krautwurst. And we will start this one in the motherland, Adam. Buccaneers 21, Seahawks 16. A run-heavy Bucs offense for this one. We had Rachaad White start this game, quickly turned back to more normal. Leonard Fournette pulled ahead of him by halftime, but then we had a hip injury for Leonard Fournette later on. So it might be Rachaad White time going forward.
Yeah, what does a hip injury even feel like? Like, I'm 38 at this point. I feel like I've probably had every.
What does a healthy hip feel like?
But what does a hip feel like? I don't know. Like, but they seem like a hip injury ended. I mean, granted, it was 100 years ago, but hip injury ended Bo Jackson's career. Like, I don't even know what a hip injury would even feel like. But Fournette did, he didn't look. I think he on his touchdown run, he kind of was like gingerly getting in the end zone. And he looked kind of funny. I'm like, I wonder what that is. And then it comes out it's a hip injury. So yeah, I mean,
I would imagine that it's a little bit rough on your hips to go up to 300 pounds in the offseason and then get back down to 240 in the regular season.
Yeah, I just stay at 240. That's how I deal with that. But yeah, Rachaad White, he hasn't really, he scored. He didn't score. Lenny scored, but he had over 100 yards rushing. He looked pretty good. He really hasn't outplayed Lenny as far as like efficiency this year. So there, it was more of us fantasy guys wanting to see Rachaad White in there. But they might get a chance now, although Tampa goes into the bye. But there was a play where he had Rachaad White had a wide open lane, and he kind of like stutter steps off to the left, and then it was like, oh shoot, there's a big lane in front of me. So he didn't look that good, but over 100 yards, he got a ton of work. But yeah, moving forward, he's probably going to be a high-end RB2 if Lenny's out for any period of time.
Yeah, we'll see how long he's out for. It's certainly a well-timed buy for his purposes. So we'll see coming out of that if he's going to miss any further time. But White, showed off some of the speed. Probably would have had even more if they weren't nursing lead at the end. The other thing is, I don't think that we'll get commonly as run-leaning a Bucs offense as we did when it was the first time since week 1 that they were anything close to that. So I don't know what it was about the matchup. Maybe it was game flow, whatever. They did jump out to a lead in the first half of that one. So maybe that helped it. So we'll see. On the passing side, Chris Godwin finally did score, so we know that he knows where the end zone is, so that's nice. And really, there's not a whole lot else to talk about from this one, I don't think, because even though the Seahawks had a bad first half, they rebounded and had a fine second half. I don't think there's really much of a takeaway from their side.
Yeah, so I think Tampa ran through 46% of the time. So yeah, they're not probably not going to be running that much. They haven't played with many leads this year and probably won't, but they look much better when they're balanced, kind of like a lot of the teams this year. But yeah, Seattle, I think a lot of to do with it. Seattle opened up with 6 straight punts to start the game, so which they haven't done, I think, with some stat to back to 3 or 4 years ago. But yeah, so Seattle got going again in the second half. Like you said, there's not much to take away. Geno was QB9 on the week, which is a little disappointing considering all the injuries we had to quarterbacks in the bye weeks. But there were 6 quarterbacks that scored 19 points this week. So he was one of those 6 that finished between 19.1 just under 20 points. So he was fine. Scored 2 touchdowns there. Lockett and VK kind of did their thing. And Kenneth Walker saved his day. Can you believe we're saying this? Kenneth Walker saved his day with 6 catches. I thought that guy couldn't catch. I'm going to say that every single week. And we thought, although he did drop one. He did drop one ball, but it's nice. It's really nice when you have a running back that relies on rushing yards and touchdowns to be able to save his day in the passing game. He's seeing a lot of the pass down work, which is really good.
Yeah, garbage rushing day for him, but I think Tampa Bay is capable of that at times, so we're not going to worry just yet. And a bye for them as well, so we'll see coming out of the Week 11 bye. Certainly still starting Kenneth Walker, and like you said, it's nice that if he can't get it going on the ground, he is capable of catching 6 balls for 55 yards in a given game. I was certainly happy that Geno Smith got there eventually because I took his over 1.5 touchdowns on Sleeper, and the way the first half ended, I was like, oh crap. But
gonna be a sweat. Nice.
And all in the fourth quarter too. And I mean, that Marquise Goodwin touchdown catch at the end, that was a very nice throw and an even nicer catch. So it was, I felt smiled upon. The second game is going to end the smiling because it was Vikings 33, Bills 30 in overtime. And let's start on the positive because To me, Adam, Justin Jefferson is one of those guys that if you're talking to somebody who's going to watch the game with you, doesn't know football that well, you're like, Justin Jefferson, he's really good. And then you watch the game and you're like, oh my God, he's so good. Like, what a game for Justin Jefferson here.
Yeah. This is, and this is why I started playing fantasy football, was because of this type of game when I was a child, just watching the Bills lose and watching other players do really well. So Justin Jefferson, thank you for taking me back to why I fell in love with fantasy football. But yeah, he was there when they needed him every play, acrobatic catches, timing. I mean, all over whatever. You don't have to say much about Justin Jefferson. The guy's he's been so good, and he's tied to Stephon Diggs, the rest of Diggs' career because of that trade that they made to get Diggs. And Jefferson's the man.
Mm-hmm. Another generous day for the Bills run D. I mean, not necessarily getting run over. Most of Dalvin Cook's production came on an 81-yard touchdown run, but it is 3 straight games where they let the opposing running backs do some scoring. 2 interceptions helped that defense because really overall, they weren't stopping Minnesota a whole lot on offense.
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota scored 26 offensive points, and that includes overtime. The Bills offense had a bunch of turnovers, which gives the ball back to Minnesota. And I've been saying this probably all year, it's a JV defense. You have 3 first-team All-Pros in the secondary that have played like a combined 5 games. And you lost Tremaine Edmonds in the first quarter of that game against the Vikings. So, they were playing without Greg Rousseau. I mean, there's a reason why the Bills are still the favorite to win the Super Bowl this year for Vegas, is because they know all these guys are going to be coming back. But as far as this game was concerned, Dalvin Cook, it's nice to see him get going with an 80-yard touchdown. The Vikings kind of did what they wanted to do, which was not get the ball to Adam Thielen. I think he's the odd man out. With Hawkinson there, even Osborne saw 9 targets. So we'll see moving forward, but I think Thielen might be the odd man out. You're not dropping him, but I don't think he's like must start wide receiver 3 on it anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Somebody on your bench for right now on the Buffalo side, Josh Allen, we were watching all morning leading up to game time to see if he was going to play. He did play. Clearly not full strength. Like, I just thought watching him, you could tell it wasn't the same arm as usual. It didn't change his approach. He was certainly taking the shots and making the runs that he usually does. So I think we go ahead and use him. It clearly wasn't his sharpest game. I'm not sure that the elbow is significantly, certainly not mostly to blame for the interceptions. He just seemed to be pressing and made a couple bad decisions.
Yeah, that's kind of been him. Every time that they lose, it's him pressing and making bad decisions. And unfortunately, it's always in one-score games. I think he's 0-4 in overtime now for his career. But they either win by 20 or they lose by a point or 2. So, I mean, yeah, he still got there, past there, quarterback 6 on the week. I mean, that's going to be his low. 84 rushing yards, 330 passing yards. I mean, fantasy-wise, he's going to be fine every single week. But yeah, it looks like he's pressing. Throws an interception, a bad one on 4th and 2 from I think the 5 or something. Like, he didn't even need to throw it in the end zone. Not that there was anything there. He couldn't have run it. There's nobody open. So, but yeah, still a bad pick there. And yeah, a lot of it comes when he's pressing and end of the game. He didn't take the check down to Singletary. I'm glad that they have all these pass catching running backs because they never, ever throw them the ball. In fact, they activated 4 running backs and a fullback so that they could give them a combined 3 targets on the game. Good thing they went out and traded for Nyheim Hines so that he could touch the ball 1 time and then they could activate Duke Johnson. Like, it's just, none of it makes sense. But Allen, Diggs, Gabe Davis, and Singletary still all got there on the stat sheet.
Yeah, I guess there are worse things than trading a 6th-round pick for a punt returner. Huh?
Sure.
Devin Singletary dominated backfield work, as you mentioned. We barely saw Nyheim Hines, and Singletary scored twice in this game. I didn't even know that was still possible.
Well, it was his first 2 rushing touchdowns of the year. And I had a feel like we were talking about it, Mike and I, on the Deep End podcast last week. I thought this might be a Singletary game, specifically because I didn't think Allen was going to play, but also the weather. And even if Allen did play with the elbow, and they came out and they were running the ball great. Singletary had his best run ever as a Bill yesterday, early in the game, made 3 or 4 guys miss, scores twice. Should have been James Cook's touchdown there. I thought he was in, but they ruled him a half yard short. And Singletary came in and got the score. But, from a fantasy perspective, the Bills main skill guys are generally going to get there every single week, and that's what we're here for.
Mm-hmm. I don't have anything else from that game. What about you?
Yeah, just Isaiah McKenzie is still locked into that slot receiver role if it means anything. 81% routes out of the slot, so he's more of a gadgety guy. They're not really dialing anything up for him, but at least he's out there.
Yeah. At least he's out there.
At least he's out there.
Khalil Shakir. Lions 31, Bears 30. DeAndre Swift might have been pissed last week about his usage. He's probably not much happier right now. 6 carries in this game, 6 yards, 1 touchdown. And I believe it was a 9-yard touchdown as well, right? So he had like minus 3 yards on the rest of his carries. 3 targets in this game, 1 catch. So he was healthy in practice. He was not on the final injury report, still barely used. So I'm not sure what we can look for going forward unless it's Dan Campbell saying, he's healthy and I'm going to actually make sure he gets the ball this week.
Yeah, I mean, there's just no explanation. We said last week he's probably a flex, going forward. He's probably the same kind of thing. 6 carries, two targets, in a game against the Bears. We thought the running back should have been involved more. Jamal Williams is still doing his thing. Maybe Swift has to have like an emotional, huddle in the preseason where he's crying, because ever since Jamal Williams did that, but coaches love Jamal. He's always been kind of a more than expected in every backfield that he's been in. So Jamal Williams is still a flex option. He's been kind of a great piece for these 0 or hero RB teams that have been able to start him. So I think you keep flexing Jamal Williams until further notice.
Yeah, the team wants to run the ball. He's had double-digit carries in every single game. He's had 15-plus carries in all but 3 games so far this year. So he remains somebody you don't feel awesome about using, and especially with not a ton of receiving work. But he's gotten there more often than he hasn't this year. So he's been a nice addition to teams. Amon-Ra St. Brown got whatever he wanted in that game yesterday. 42.3% of team targets, 52.6% of receptions, 50.4% of receiving yards, 10 catches, 119 yards on 11 targets in that game. Basically everything that Jared Goff threw went to Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's not out of line with what's happened to him before. It's just kind of the fruition of what we've been expecting based on his role when he's been healthy.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a couple weeks coming. He was hurt and this and that, and then finally got it. Yeah, he gets his target share, gets back, and it's so interesting. You get situations like DeAndre Swift, like no one can figure it out. Like, why isn't Swift getting the ball? And then the opposite end, like they're so creative with Amon-Ra. He lines up in the backfield. He ran a little out route out of the backfield, and they caught the blitz, and no one could keep up with him on that route. And they're super creative with him, and so they're trying to get the ball in his hands, and losing Hawkinson there was even better for him. So yeah, he's going to continue to get massive targets on a team that's not very good. And so good for him. He'll be fine as long as he's healthy. He'll be a wide receiver, low end wide receiver 1 moving forward.
On the other side, we talked about the Detroit running backs, but now we got to talk about the best running back in the league, and that's Justin Fields. 2 straight games, over 140 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns rushing. I mean, the guy is he's finally getting used the way that we hoped that he would, and he is absolutely delivering on it. And he even threw a couple of touchdowns, both to Cole Kmet in this one, who has 5 touchdown catches now over the past 3 games, by the way.
I know, that's just crazy. He's just that's it. It's always the touchdowns, right? No yards for Cole Kmet, but yeah, Fields is QB1. Now I will say he's not, he's the 2nd best running back in the league behind Josh Allen. I will throw that out there, but yeah, Fields he only goes 12 of 20, 60% fine, 167 yards, 2 touchdowns, a pick, but they're rushing. That's what we've been talking. 147 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns, and they're not like. Some of them are designed, which is what we like to see. Like we wanted this last year from him, all this design running. But some of them are just he's moving around in the pocket, and then he just makes 3 guys miss, and he's gone. So this is huge for fantasy. He's a top 3 fantasy quarterback moving forward with Mahomes and Allen. And so yeah, I mean, Fields was on waivers a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, and now he's on some of my best fantasy teams.
Yeah, and he's got not great schedule the rest of the way. He's got Atlanta this coming week, so that's obviously a great matchup for everybody except Justin Herbert. After that, the schedule doesn't look great, but I mean, he's going to have a bad outing before I can knock him outside the top 12 any week.
Well, not only that, but it's much easier to scheme rushing for a quarterback that isn't like a great passer. You know what I mean? Like like you can scheme carries, you can scheme up, like he's gonna get his rushing yards. He's not afraid to run. They want him to run. So, and rushing yards are so much more valuable to a quarterback than they are anywhere else. So I mean, he rushes for 60 yards is like his floor now. That's 120 passing yards in most leagues. So, even if he has a dud, you're still going to roll him out there the next week unless he's injured. I mean, and then the interesting part too is, they play the Lions, which is the worst defense in the league. Claypool gets 2 targets, Mooney gets 4 targets. I mean, that's not a great sign for those guys, because you thought if they were going to get off in any game, it was going to be this one.
Yeah, Mooney was at least efficient, caught all 4 of his targets. Cole Kmet, though, now has 7 and 6 targets the past 2 games. Granted, both of those against very good matchups for tight end scoring on the year. But like I said, Atlanta's up next, so we should at least be able to use Cole Kmet in Week 11, and then we'll see about things beyond that. All told, the Bears players are delivering now more than you expected from them a few weeks ago. Justin Fields is looking good in what the team's asking him to do. It's been a nice turnaround after the offense looked like we might not be able to use any pieces of it through the season.
Right. And speaking of usable pieces, I think, Montgomery's going to be more usable going forward here. Even going into the game, he was getting 2 out of every 3 drives to Herbert, but now Herbert has a hip injury. Again, something that I can't identify with. So hip injury there, that could be nothing. It could be Jamar Chase out for 4 to 6 weeks. We'll find out. And then after, obviously, the injury to Herbert, Montgomery saw everything. He's peaked this year at around 75% touches for the backfield. So, if you've been holding on to him and kind of been struggling along with him, he might, if there is an injury moving forward, he might be someone you can certainly be confident in starting at least.
Mm-hmm. Chiefs 27, Jaguars 17. Juju Smith-Schuster's injury worth talking about here. Suffered a concussion. Not his first one. If you search Juju Smith-Schuster injury history, you will come up with his record of injuries on Draft Sharks. And there are quite a few of them. Notably, in this case, this is his 4th concussion since he entered the league. We'll see whether that impacts how long he's going to be out, but it certainly doesn't help his case for returning quickly. And of course, if Juju's out, maybe it continues to give opportunity for Kadarius Toney, who was involved yesterday and scored a touchdown.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting moving forward. Hate to see that for Juju. 4th concussion, and it was a horrific one too. I have a lot of him. I was going to say Jerry Jeudy, same freaking thing. Minus the concussion, but yeah, we'll get to him. A lot of wonderful first quarter injuries to my receivers yesterday, but yeah. So we'll see. I mean, Toney looks awesome, right? Toney's probably, like, if you're just talking about talent, he's probably the most talented receiver on the roster. So he was a little bit more involved. His one touchdown was wide open. There's a blown coverage. He's just like standing in the flats and just nobody covers him. So he even ran in with one leg. That's how good of a touchdown it was. That's how open he was. But he wasn't on the field much still. I know people have been talking about, Juju gets hurt early in the first quarter and his he still wasn't on the field much. A lot of times it's just game plan dependent. Like, they didn't plan on, he's not necessarily going to slide right in at outside receiver for Juju, not having really played that role all week during practice or something like that. But, going into this week, if we still have Hardman out, if we still have Juju out, another week in the offense for Toney, I could see them getting him involved more as far as a volume of passes going his way. But he just looks electric with the ball, breaking tackles, all that type stuff. So, from a excitement fantasy standpoint, I really hope that they do get him involved, because he could be a serious problem.
Yeah, there will certainly be upside to Toney any game going forward, and especially if either or both of those guys remains out. It's certainly worth noting that with Mecole Hardman inactive for this game and Juju leaving early, Toney still finished 3rd in routes among Chiefs wideouts, ran 17 versus 34 for Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 29 for Justin Watson. So I would bet on him getting more targets than Justin Watson week to week going forward, but that's at least, worth noting for likely variability in the way that he's used. Isaiah Pacheco dominated the groundwork for the Chiefs yesterday. 16 of the team's 17 running back rushes, 82 yards on the ground, 5.1 per rush. And really, I would say that this was the first game that was not against a tough run defense since they moved Pacheco into the starting role. So I'm not saying expect this level of work weekly going forward, but we at least finally got to see that the Chiefs are willing to let Pacheco lead on the ground. And at least as importantly, we saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire barely involved at all, 4 total snaps.
Yeah, wild. That's kind of been heading that way, right? I think there were only 17 carries in the backfield, I think, in this game, and Pacheco had 16 of them. Just double checking there. Yep. Well, if you count Michael Burton, but yeah. So it's interesting. And Pacheco looks good too, right? I mean, he looks explosive, and generally that's how it works in those offenses, right? Like they don't run as much, and so then when they do, it kind of opens up some gaping holes for them. So yeah, it'd be nice to see Pacheco. It'd be nice to can we just make one of these running backs inactive for these games, like instead of like, so we can confidently start, guys like Isaiah Pacheco. I mean, 80 yards and 16 carries is great. Again, he didn't get in the end zone here, but yeah, he's the guy to start moving forward. We can safely move CEH to the bench.
Yeah, to me here, we use Pacheco in non-PPR. We use Jerick McKinnon in PPR. Team high 8 targets in this game against Jacksonville. Second straight game with 8 targets and 6 catches. And CEH, they don't want to use him, clearly. I mean, they certainly could have used him in any way that they wanted to in this game and not damage. They beat the Jaguars by 10 points, but they didn't want to. So we'll look at Pacheco, we'll look at McKinnon. We don't really know yet what the team's going to do near the goal line. We only had one red zone carry. It was Isaiah Pacheco in this game from the 15-yard line to the 6. That set up the Kadarius Toney touchdown catch. There were no other rushing attempts in the red zone. So we'll see exactly what the usage is going to look like down there for the backfield. On the Jaguars side, nothing revelatory, I don't think. Or revelatory, you might want to say. Other than that, they apparently don't care about throwing the ball to Travis Etienne. 3 targets for him, tied for 5th on the team in a game where Trevor Lawrence threw 40 times. So just 7.5% target share for Etienne.
Yeah, he did have a nice long catch and run on one of those. Yeah, it's interesting. They're kind of spreading it around. I mean, Kirk was the guy. Kirk's been the guy the last couple of weeks. He kind of had a lull there for 2 or 3 weeks, but back to wide receiver 4 with two touchdowns. And they're targeting him around the end zone, which is where maybe you want to see Etienne targeted a little bit more. But yeah, Lawrence QB5 finally gets up there with 2 touchdowns, 20 plus rushing yards again. And our boy, Evan Ingram just gets coming off the back injury there, but he practiced in full kind of at the end of the week. And maybe it's just another week of where whenever he's coming off an injury, you don't really want to start him, but he had a touchdown called back. He got because the O-line is so good. Like, how does that, he gets a touchdown called back because the offensive lineman drives a D lineman into the end zone and they call him for ineligible man downfield. Like, are you kidding me? Brutal, because that was
that guy's a moron then, because you shouldn't be run blocking on a pass play.
I guess. I mean, I don't know. It's just you dominate another man so badly that they call you for ineligible downfield. How embarrassing is that to the defensive lineman? Oh my gosh. But
he probably feels great. He's like, I'll take getting pushed on my butt if it stops a touchdown from happening.
But yeah, that would have saved Ingram's day, but only 5 or 6 fantasy points for Ingram, but he's been fine for us all year. He's still a borderline to tight end 1.
Yeah, and it's obviously disappointing, but it's worth noting that his playing time was there. He ran 4 fewer routes than Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, who tied for the league, and he tied for the team lead, and he was in 3rd in that category. So it wasn't limited for the amount of time he was on the field by the back. So, we'll consider that not a factor going forward. They now have a bye in week 11, so he'll be even healthier when they return in week 12. He'll be okay, if not somebody that we can count on for numbers week to week. You mentioned Christian Kirk. Zay Jones got 10 targets. Nobody else on the team got more than 4 looks. So Zay Jones has been a solid, low wide receiver 3 level play for us. Not sure how high the ceiling goes. Obviously, the hope is that he scores a touchdown in any given game, but we'll just take this volume and the short range targets as we move forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and they're spreading the ball around. So they kind of have to. I mean, Kirk's been great this year, but I wouldn't consider him like some alpha receiver that you have to get the ball to a bunch.
Dolphins 39, Browns 17. Not surprising that Jacoby Brissett can't hang in a shootout. What I'm surprised by here, Adam, is Amari Cooper only getting 3 targets in a game where Brissett throws 35 passes and they lose by 22. I can't comprehend how that happens.
it's just one of those things that just doesn't make any sense. I mean, Peoples Jones has been kind of a wide receiver 3 the last couple weeks. I just don't get it. I mean, this happens a lot of times with not a lot of times. This can happen with receivers, right? Where for some reason they're bracketed and they're taking like this. This has happened. Devontae Adams last week, 1 target in the second half. Stephon Diggs last week, like 2 targets in the second half. Like they try to take receivers out of the game. It's a lot easier to take receivers out of the game than it is running backs. So I'm assuming something like that just happened, but I'd still be starting him going forward. But a game against the Dolphins and maybe a shootout you're hoping, it just sucks.
Yeah, he at least did have a big game in week 8, the last previous time out on the field. This is his 3rd game among the past 4, though, with 4 catches or fewer. So, maybe there's a slight buy window on Amari Cooper before Deshaun Watson gets back. They're at Buffalo in week 11. They're home for Tampa in week 12. And then week 13 is the first game where Deshaun Watson could play. So certainly Cooper's somebody I'm using. I think it's somebody you can consider buying depending on how Amari Cooper holders right now feel about him. Donovan Peoples-Jones, as you mentioned, he's been producing 5 catches for 99 yards in this one, team high 9 targets. That makes 6 straight games for DPJ with 4+ receptions. He's had 70+ receiving yards in 5 of those 6 games, including each of the past 4 weeks. And if that's like the level where we need him, where you can just play him as a wide receiver 3 and see what happens. 4 catches, 70 yards. That's 11 PPR points. It's not huge, but that's like wide receiver 41 right now for the season. So if you're starting that out as your floor, and then anything above that is nice for a guy that you took in round 15 or you grabbed off waivers recently.
Yeah, he's been a great, late round best ball pick, and Watson coming back. Absolutely. I mean, he's been a wide receiver 3 the last couple weeks. And so, I mean, the thing is, you probably weren't starting him with injuries and bye weeks. Maybe you got a chance to slide him into a lineup, but yeah, I mean, he's certainly worth a look. Because with the Cooper inconsistency, I mean, Cooper's been like that his whole career. It's just been like 3 or 4 monster games in a season that kind of carries his whole fantasy outlook. But yeah, Peoples-Jones obviously were worth owning, and he's a wide receiver 3, especially with Watson coming back.
Yeah, and there's certainly room for both him and Cooper to be fine within that stretch where DPJ has been delivering for us. We've certainly had some good Cooper games as well, and with Watson coming back, that should only increase. Elsewhere, we had a touchdown from Harrison Bryant there. Still not a huge receiving day, but nice if we used him. David Njoku not back yet. We'll see if he's in the mix for week 11. On the Miami side, apparently Mike McDaniel likes Jeff Wilson Jr. better than Raheem Mostert, because we got 42 Wilson snaps versus 19 for Mostert in this one. That's a shift from last week, which was basically an even split, 28-26 in Wilson's favor in that one. Both guys scored touchdowns. So if you have Mostert, the silver lining is the offense is really good, and there's a chance that both of them can deliver fantasy points in the same game. But Wilson's the guy, it looks like.
Yeah, Wilson took over the backfield everywhere except for the 2-minute offense. He's a running back 2 moving forward in an explosive offense under Mike McDaniel. And so, yeah, I mean, it's Jeff Wilson's the poster boy for never drop a running back ever, because there's always something that can happen where you can get traded or whatever. Not anymore. Trade deadline's over, but yeah, I mean, there's always, now they have played, they played 3 of the worst defenses the last 3 weeks: Lions, Bears, Browns, but fine. I mean, everyone's going to play bad defenses, and they've been capitalizing. So, not much to say about Tua, Waddle, and Tyreek. I mean, they're all doing their thing. And so you're obviously going to be starting them week in and week out. But the question was, this Dolphins backfield, what do we do? And I think the answer is Wilson, but we also said last week or 2 weeks ago that Mostert's a flex option too, because the offense is so explosive, and they still like him, and he's still okay in the offense. So yeah, it's kind of exciting to be able to have pieces of this Dolphins team.
Yeah, he certainly looked like more of a flex option last week, though, than he did yesterday. Because if the split's going to be like that, I'm not going to bet on Mostert
scoring
out
every
most
week.
of the time.
Yeah.
They get a week 11 bye, and then after that's a game against Houston at home. So that should be a spot where we can use both Dolphins running backs. After that, a much tougher matchup with San Francisco. And then it kind of evens out the rest of the way. It's another positive rushing matchup against the Chargers in week 14. Then we got Bills, Packers, Patriots to close things out. Both guys belong on rosters. Jeff Wilson Jr. looks like the guy to use.
Yeah, revenge game against the Niners for everybody.
That's right. It is the fourth best remaining running back schedule, according to our strength of schedule page. If you head up to Intel and then click on strength of schedule, you can check that by position. And Miami's fourth best in running back. And we'll talk about the quarterback strength of schedule for another team coming up. But before we wrap up with the Dolphins, Mike Gesicki has now played less than 50% of the snaps in 3 straight games. So we highlighted him when things were going well. That was short-lived. He's back to being somebody that's not Cole Kmet.
You couldn't wait. You couldn't wait to talk about Mike Gesicki under 50%. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those, he's been a touchdown or bust guy kind of for a while now. So, again, he's still in the mix of 8 to 9 tight ends after maybe the top 6 that you can mix and match. And you can make kind of an excuse for any of them.
Not this one. Unless Durham Smythe goes down again, because that was the thing that coincided. He showed up during Durham Smythe's injury, and even then, it was 2 games of 7 targets. He scored in 2 of 3 games, but there's only those 2 games of more than 4 targets all season. So there's been a lot more bad Mike Gesicki than good Mike Gesicki this year.
I just hate Durham Smythe because he looks like Mike Gesicki, and they have like a very similar number. So every time you're rooting for Gesicki, it's freaking Smythe.
Well, there's a very easy way to tell them apart. If the guy is seen blocking at all, then it's not Mike Gesicki.
There you go.
Giants 24, Texans 16. Actually, I should say Saquon Barkley 24, Texans 16. We did get a couple of passing scores in this one, but Saquon Barkley ran 35 times versus 17 Daniel Jones pass attempts. So even the passing success was just by the grace of Saquon Barkley in this game. And really, that's the case against Wan'Dale Robinson. Whenever somebody asks me, hey, is Wan'Dale Robinson going to break out the rest of the way? No, because the Giants don't want anybody in the passing game to break out the rest of the way. They want to pass it as little as they can. They want to ride Saquon Barkley. They want to not pay him as much as he probably should be looking for on a contract extension. And they want to win games like this.
Yeah, they're not gonna re-sign Saquon Barkley, so they're just running him into oblivion. Can we stop with the 35 carries though? Like that needs to stop now. He's never gonna last. He's like the only player left on my fantasy teams that like I wanted to draft. Everybody else is hurt. Nobody else wants to play football. Saquon's all I have left. So if we could just get him, 6 targets instead of 1 and 20 carries instead of 35. That would be much, much helpful. Yeah, but like you said, it was Saquon Barkley. Like they had to ask him, "Hey, is it okay if we pass the ball? Like, go take a seat for a play so we can throw it." Jones saves his day with 2 touchdowns, one of them to Slayton for 49 yards. I was happy about that because a lot of us were in a pinch this week with the bye weeks and the injuries. Like, what do you do with Stafford? What do you do with Kyler Murray? All these guys. So Jones was a guy I had to throw in my lineup and saved it with two touchdowns. So, but like you said, they want to run the ball with Saquon. They want to run the ball with Daniel Jones. Like they don't want him throwing either. So, but yeah, no, Jones was fine in the day, but it was all about Saquon. I'm just happy to see him get out of the game healthy.
And clearly, Kenny Golladay was right to say that he doesn't have anything left to prove to coaches because he returned. He assumed his perch 4th among wide receivers in playing time. And that's what life is for him now. He doesn't care.
Yeah, no, I don't. I hate when I even see reports on it. Like, who's Kenny Golladay? Like, why are we even talking about him anymore?
On the Texans side, things same as usual. Brandon Cooks did return, but he trailed Nico Collins in playing time and targets. To be fair, Brandon Cooks did have a 4th quarter touchdown catch nullified by a holding penalty, so his fantasy day would have been better. But if he's going to settle in short of Nico Collins in playing time and even just be even with Nico Collins and targets going forward, it's going to be tough to like Cooks as a wide receiver 3.
Yeah, it's tough to start Cooks. The offense stinks. The only guy you're looking to start here is Pierce. He's got the 2-minute offense. He's getting much more in the passing game now. He's really good. I'm going to be excited to watch Pierce, hopefully in the near future on a good team. But yeah, he's great. He's an low end RB1 going forward.
Yeah, unfortunately, he gets Washington next week, number 2 in rushing DVOA, according to Football Outsiders. But I mean, we're going to be starting him in nearly all cases anyway.
Right.
Steelers 20, Saints 10 in a game that nobody should have watched. Happy Jaylen Warren breakout week, by the way, Adam. We saw him not break out, actually. Matched Najee Harris in routes, led Najee Harris in targets, 3 of those, caught all 3 for 40 yards. But Najee Harris had a season-high 20 carries, season-high 99 yards on the ground, season best 4.95 yards per carry. So this is what Jaylen Warren breakout looks like. And this is why the excitement should have been much more muted.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is what you get when you got the coach the Steelers have. He wants one back, and he's just the only reason he's talking about Jaylen Warren is because people keep bringing it up. like he wouldn't come out and just start talking all about him if people didn't say, "Hey, when is it Jaylen Warren week? Is it Jaylen Warren week?" Not that it's not warranted. I mean, Jaylen Warren is better than Najee Harris, but Najee still whatever. Who scored 9 fantasy points, didn't get stuffed at the goal line, isn't involved in the passing game really. So you're starting Najee probably because you drafted him in the first or second round, and because there's all these injuries and bye weeks, and he gets the touches when he's in there. But yeah, I mean, he looked a little bit better. Maybe he's a little healthier coming off the bye, but being stuffed at the goal line there crushes his day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's still a bad situation for everybody involved. We did have a rushing touchdown from Kenny Pickett in this game, which made him a top 12 fantasy quarterback heading into Monday night. So that shows what Kenny Pickett can do rushing wise. It also shows what kind of week it was for fantasy quarterbacks. And I don't think there was anything for us to really take away from the wide receiver usage. We got George Pickens on the field more. We got the slot split between Steven Sims and Gunnar Olszewski. And we just got more of the unexciting Pittsburgh passing that barely keeps Deontay Johnson and George Pickens relevant.
Right. I mean, it was nice to see it kind of be more narrowed into them. I mean, Pickens getting the Claypool carries is kind of, I mean, he scored an 8-yard touchdown run, so that makes him fantasy relevant there. Had 2 carries on the day. So that's, people might look at that, it's not much, but if he's getting 2 carries a game, generally they're going to be in big spots down by the goal line. It's nice to see him get that, because I think Pickens is certainly startable going forward. Deontay Johnson still hasn't scored yet this year, I don't think. So that's a problem with the offense. And so I don't know, man. That's just it's Steelers need a competent quarterback to unlock this thing. And unfortunately, it is not Kenny Pickett.
They need quite a bit. So we'll see where things go. They've got a bunch of guys that are yeah, you can use them if you need to. Let's hope that you don't need to. But in a lot of cases, you need to. On the other side of this one, Andy Dalton stunk again. 174 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. Juwan Johnson was his most frequent target with 7, caught the only touchdown pass for the team. And they're wasting Alvin Kamara, who had 45 total yards in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with Dalton if he stinks and is throwing the ball where it needs to go and is, 2 interceptions, 300 passing yards, fine. But when you're not throwing the ball to Kamara, when you're not getting the passing yards to the receivers, when Olave is 3rd on the team with 5 targets, Kamara 4 targets, 8 carries. I mean, the offense just, and that's without it. And Taysom Hill isn't even involved, and these guys aren't doing anything in these games. So I just think it's inconsistency. I'd love to see a quarterback change, because at least Winston is gonna sling the ball around. Juwan Johnson, 25, like you said, 25% target share, tight end 4 in the week, another receiving touchdown. I have a league where I've got him and Pitts, and I'm just going to do it this week. I'm going to put in Juwan Johnson so that I can change the look on Pitts. Pitts is guaranteed to go for 200 actual receiving yards, not air yards, as soon as I make that swap. So Juwan Johnson, welcome to the starting lineup.
All right. Big week. They do have the Rams coming up, so not a much better situation for overall offensive success. The Steelers did get TJ Watt back yesterday. They got a lot of other injuries, though. It has not been a terrific defense, but the pass rush was there yesterday. I would not be surprised if we see Jameis Winston step in, and why not? I mean, if you're going to get 2 interceptions anyway, right, you might as well take the guy that's going to sling it downfield and lick his fingers afterward.
That's right. Eat his fingers.
The Titans beat the Broncos 17-10 in another game that people should not have been subjected to. Muted offensive production everywhere unless you were Nick Westbrook-Ikine. 5 catches, 119 yards, 2 touchdowns on 8 targets. Now, this is the same guy who through the first 8 games of this season had 7 total catches, 138 total yards. So not a breakthrough week, just one of those outlier weeks. Treylon Burks did return for this game and actually tied Westbrook-Ikine in routes. So even though the numbers weren't there for the rookie, that's encouraging.
Yeah, that is encouraging. I mean, the whole offense, though, is just, I mean, Westbrook-Ikine, he scores on a flea flicker, he did score on a corner route, which was a beautiful throw and catch, back corner, defensive back draped all over him. So that was nice to see. And he had flashes last year a little bit here and there, but no one was starting Westbrook Akine. Thank you for best ball. That's why we play. But yeah, I mean, there's no one really on the passing game you're even thinking about starting until things get going. Henry, RB28 in the week. This is the downside for Henry when he doesn't really get involved in the passing game. 2 catches for 14 yards, no touchdowns. So Broncos really good defense though. So this was not expected to be a typical Titans Jaguars or Titans Texans game where he can carry 30 times for 200 yards. So but yeah, you're obviously firing up Henry, but this is just a down week for him.
Yeah, it'll happen. Obviously, on the Broncos side, you got to buy Jalen Virgil as quickly as you can. 66-yard TD catch in this one. Just in case you're like me and had no idea who this guy was before yesterday, he is an undrafted rookie from Appalachian State who topped out at 24 receptions across 5 years at App State. He accounted for 23% of Russell Wilson's passing yardage yesterday. So if you look at the numbers, the total, it seems like, Russell Wilson came out of the bye and had a solid passing day. He threw like 42 pass attempts in this game. So it was okay. Certainly nothing particularly encouraging. And it's even less encouraging because Jerry Jeudy came away from it with a left ankle injury.
Absolutely brutal. He walked off the field, but carted to the locker room. He's, has a history of these injuries.
This is at least the opposite ankle from the one that he hurt early last season.
Thank God. It's good to hear. But yeah, they were saying after the game, it doesn't seem like it's worst case scenario, but people were thinking it might be an Achilles or something like that. So it's not that, but it's probably a high ankle sprain. You know what I mean? Like,
Rappaport said, I think right before we started this, that the belief is that he strained a muscle in the back of his ankle. Now, I don't really know exactly what that means in terms of how bad the injury is, how long he'll be out. He's in for more testing today, so we should know more by tonight, and certainly a lot more by the start of the practice week. But it's at least like you said, it's at least not as bad as it could have been, and we'll see if he's going to be out for week 11 when they have a much better matchup against the Raiders.
Yeah, that is good news because I've got a lot of him and good for Jeudy, and it's just a lot of times, man, these injuries happen in like the first drive. It's like, man, no fantasy points, just brutal. But anyways, don't go picking up Jalen Virgil. Like you said, he's had a 77-yard score or whatever it was. The safety fell down. Like, it's not even like he looked great. Like, he ran a fly, the corner let him go. The safety was supposed to peel back and fell. And so he walked in for a touchdown. That's been a lot of Russell Westbrook. Yikes. There's problems there too. There's problems with Westbrook and Wilson. But
Russell Westbrook's probably a better passer at this point.
Maybe. But yeah, I mean, it's just the Broncos again for the night. They're just a disaster. Cortland Sutton, even with Jeudy out, couldn't get going to get 6 for 60 or something like that. Like, this offense is shot. Dynasty wise, I know this isn't a dynasty podcast, but what are they going to do with Russell Wilson? Like, this offense is it's dead, and they're locked into Wilson for years. So this is a problem.
I think it depends on what the next coaching staff thinks of Russell Wilson, because I'll be absolutely shocked if Nathaniel Hackett makes it beyond this season, and we'll see how much of it's coaching. But, last year, Russell Wilson had signs of, concern, and it was easy at that point to say, well, yeah, this was following his finger injury, so he struggled coming back from that. I mean, this now is getting to be a full season thing in new digs with new coaches, with new players around him. So yeah, we'll see where the team goes from here. For now, if Jerry Jeudy misses time, that'll certainly be good for Cortland Sutton, who did get 11 targets in yesterday's game. Greg Dulcich disappointed in this one against the Tennessee defense that's been excellent for tight end scoring. He was third behind Sutton and Kendall Hinton in routes, though, didn't get the targets. So we're going to chalk this one up to that stuff happens. Much better matchup for everybody against the Raiders in week 11. So even though nothing about this offense says you can expect ceiling performances, there should at least be better than there was this week. And to be fair, the Titans have gotten good at defense in recent weeks. So they were losing some key guys to injury this week, but it's still been a good defense overall.
Yeah, exactly.
Colts 25, Raiders 20 in the next game. Jonathan Taylor, 22 carries, 147 yards, including a 66-yard touchdown run where he's finishing it, outrunning, chasing DBs. So it seems like the ankle is at least good enough that we can comfortably play him. Matt Ryan is also back in the lineup. It shouldn't be surprising, but it was, because Jeff Saturday is like, hey, I'm Jeff Saturday. I'm apparently going to be the new coach. I'm going to stick with Sam Ellinger. And then he gets to Sunday. He's like, nah. So I watched some Sam Ellinger since first I talked to you guys, and I decided I might as well go with Matt Ryan. And Matt Ryan, not only like, I think he must have spent his time off rehabbing the shoulder and also learning how to run, because he came back looking like Steve Bono. And he brought Parris Campbell's relevance back. 9 targets, 7 catches for Parris Campbell in this game.
He loves Parris Campbell. Good for him and good for Parris Campbell. But it's nice to see this. I'm so confused by the situation. Like, you hired Jeff Saturday on the stream live with us last week, or did they fire Reich? I don't know which one it was. One or the other. Like, wait a minute. Matt Ryan was healthy enough to play. Like, we weren't playing him for, like, so you're trying to punt the season. Fine, punt the season. But then you let the new coach come in and start Matt Ryan. Like, I'm just so confused as to what they're doing there. But good for the Colts as far as a team on the field. Pittman back to 9 targets. Parris Campbell 9 targets. That's what we want to see. JT back. 22 carries, 2 targets. JT looked almost back. He didn't look, his complete explosive self, but hey, 80% of JT is as good as most guys. So that's all we care about.
We'll take 147 yards and then whatever you can offer beyond that.
Correct. Yeah.
Parris Campbell, 3 straight Matt Ryan games now with 9+ targets, 7+ catches. So it looks like Parris Campbell's a guy we should start in general. Next week against Philly, is a matchup where Indy's probably going to have to throw the ball quite a bit, where I would bet on them falling behind. So it could be a spot where we use him. I wouldn't bet on Parris Campbell sitting high in the week 11 rankings, maybe somewhere around 36 to 40. We'll see exactly where things sort him out. We do still have 4 teams on bye, so that'll help him. On the other side of this one, the Raiders stink. I mean, they have some talented players. They're not a good team this year. They just are finding ways to lose. Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, at least, do not stink.
Yeah, they don't stink. They're finding ways to. I mean, this offense is way too good to just not be blowing teams out. It's just, I don't know, man. Coaching, right? I mean, we've said it before with this team. I'm surprised if McDaniels lasts into next year as well, because I mean, they gave him everything he wanted, and so Hunter Renfrow was out. Is that also a hip injury? Is that another hip injury? Yeah, that's right. These hip injuries are popping up everywhere this year. But Hollins. This was also a really tough passing matchups too. I mean, I think the Colts are the number 1 pass defense in football, but Devontae Adams did his thing, was awesome. Mac Hollins didn't do much, even though this was kind of one of his worst games. Even though he was technically the wide receiver 2 going into the game. Foster Moreau drops a touchdown, which would have been huge for our draft sharks.
I mean, for what it's worth, he got smacked away from him by
make a play. Make a play, Foster. But he's 4 targets isn't gonna cut it there. But hey, Jacobs was awesome. Adams was awesome. It's nice to see those guys back and rolling again.
And Foster Moreau did at least get a touchdown, caught 3 balls among 4 targets. More notably, I think he ran a route on 92.5% of dropback. So if he's out there that much going forward, he's going to generally do better than 4 targets. We shouldn't expect top shelf production, but that's usable kind of stuff. Like we would rather play that most times than even Cole Kmet versus the touchdowns that he's been scoring recently.
Yeah, with this lineup, as far as like the way the targets are distributed, Foster Moreau, I started him a lot of flex spots in these tight end premium leagues. He's absolutely worth a flex spot or even a starting tight end spot in these tight end premium leagues. Man, there's one more. That second touchdown would have been sweet.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing. By the way, I saw this earlier, but the Leonard Fournette injury is just a hip pointer. So he should be ready to go coming out of the week 11 bye. So don't get too excited about Rachaad White. He belongs on rosters, but don't expect him to be a lead back come week 12. Packers 31, Cowboys 28 in OT. And the big news from this one is Christian Watson coming onto the scene. 8 targets, 4 catches, 107 yards, 3 touchdowns. All of those numbers led the Packers in those categories. He doubled his nearest teammate in targets. There's certainly room for Watson to lead Packers wide receivers in targets the rest of the way. At the very least, room for him to battle Allen Lazard on a week-to-week basis. I don't know. Maybe he settles back in behind Lazard, but there's at least, it wouldn't be shocking if he is even with or ahead of Lazard in targets the rest of the way. It looks like a George Pickens, Deontay Johnson kind of situation where Lazard is probably the more reliable guy. And Watson is the explosive guy, where if they're even getting close to the same number of targets, you go for the explosive guy because of that explosion.
Yeah, I sure. And Watson's obviously worth rostering, but I don't know. It's like a one game. Like he went from like being the laughing stock horrible, like nobody wants this guy to all of a sudden, oh, he's gonna save everyone's season after a 3 touchdown game, in a crazy comeback against the Cowboys. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, great, good for him. I don't know how many people started Christian Watson this week, but he still ran less routes than Alan Lazard. And if you're in a 50-50 timeshare as far as receivers are concerned, as far as targets, with Alan Lazard going forward on a team that struggles to pass the ball, I still wouldn't get too super excited, but certainly worth rostering, and definitely smashed on some best ball teams this week.
Yeah, I do think though that he's probably George Pickens with a better quarterback at this point. Granted, a team that's not going to throw the ball a ton, and he's going to let you down most likely at least as much as he works out for you. But I think George Pickens is a good level of expectation because there are plenty of people that have been excited about him.
Yes. Yeah.
Aaron Jones's ankle is apparently fine unless he can just run on one of them because he dominated work here, put up a ton of yardage. AJ Dillon was fine, but played about half as much, 24 snaps to 45 for Aaron Jones. So, good news. We don't have to worry about Aaron Jones's ankle going forward, although much worse rushing matchup with Tennessee. And we'll see if there's any missed practice for Aaron Jones on the short week. Sometimes the short week turnaround can be tricky for guys who look like they're fine coming off an injury. But, for now, we come off of this game thinking Aaron Jones is good.
Exactly. And the Packers are definitely keep watch over this because the Packers are a team that rests their guys if there is any hint of an injury or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Robert Tonyan, by the way, is somebody that you should forget about in general. Under 60% of routes again in a shootout type of game where he could have been used, although they didn't throw the ball a lot. Really, you just play Robert Tonyan if you're expecting the Packers to fall way behind and chase, because that's the only scenario where he has had value so far this year.
Yeah, I was still, third on the team in routes run, but they only threw 20 times, so it's not going to help.
And Aaron Rodgers along those lines, QB9 right now with the Monday night game yet to go. That's thanks to those 3 touchdowns from Christian Watson. He only threw 20 passes in an overtime game, completed 14. So the team didn't want him to have that much in terms of fantasy scoring, but he got there because of those touchdowns. He remains a limited upside fantasy quarterback going forward.
Correct.
On the Dallas side, key points, Tony Pollard, obviously a must start when Zeke Elliott's out. I think he's probably a starter in week 11, even if Zeke returns for that game at Minnesota. A lot of times if we see a player in the situation where Zeke was this week, where they're calling him a game time decision, they're watching him in warmups, then it's a good indicator that he'll be back next week. Everything that they're saying about Elliott, though, is they want to make sure he's healthy for the rest of the season. They don't want it to turn it into the situation like he had with his knee last year, where it just dogged him the rest of the way. So I would expect that even if Elliott's ready to play in week 11, we're not going to get him, reclaiming total rushing control the way he was before he hurt it.
Yeah, it's another game that Elliott misses, another top 10 performance for Tony Pollard. Just lock it in. And when you drafted Pollard, this is what you were hoping for, right? You're hoping for Zeke to miss some games. He gets in there. He's an RB1, can't miss. Yeah, listen, they should just keep resting Zeke. Make sure he's 100%. Let him sit out the next 4 weeks for all I care. So Pollard will look great. Used him a little bit in the passing game. Looks explosive. And I just can't believe that the way that the Bills blew the game against the Vikings, people are kind of forgetting how the Cowboys had this game in hand too.
Yeah. I was going to say CeeDee Lamb, big game, Dalton Schultz, nice game, but not the best game for Dak Prescott. He got there for us fantasy wise, had the 3 touchdown passes, QB6 heading into Monday night, but 2 costly INTs in this one. Not sure there's a whole lot of fantasy takeaway. You're going to have games like that. I guess the takeaway from it is even with that, he still got there for us. So he's a pretty good fantasy QB going forward.
Yeah, he's fine going forward. Exactly. Dalton Schultz was back. That was good to see. And CeeDee Lamb finally has a blow up game, right? 11 for 150 and 2. He's on. I have him on my highest stake team, which was so nice to be rooting for him. But then you go and you look like, oh look, I played against him everywhere else. so awesome. But yeah, no, Lamb finally had that signature blow up game this year, and great 38 fantasy points.
Mm-hmm. Anything else from that game?
I think that's it.
Cardinals 27, Rams 17. No Kyler Murray, no Matthew Stafford here. Target volume still remained for DeAndre Hopkins and Rondale Moore. Moore in particular, 3 straight games of 8+ targets and 7+ catches now. He has seen at least 8 targets and caught at least 6 balls in every game this season where he has spent at least half of his time in the slot. So as long as we don't see Cliff Kingsbury make up another reason to move Rondale Moore out of the slot, he should be a good weekly option going forward in PPR leagues.
I wonder if Cliff Kingsbury secretly loves the fact that Colt McCoy was getting the ball out on time. Like, hey guys, I call a play. He goes into his drop and throws the ball on time to the receivers. He's not running around back there. A quarterback that can actually see over the line, kind of. Although
wasn't playing Call of Duty this week.
Wasn't playing Call of Duty this week, but yeah, more 12 targets. Hopkins for 14 targets. That's all we want to see. Of course, AJ Green steals a touchdown naturally. So sick. There's no way I thought that was AJ. I'm in my kitchen, hands raised, fist pumping for DeAndre Hopkins touchdown. And my son's like, Dad, that was AJ Green. I'm like, are you kidding me? He's still around.
You got to watch the game from close enough that you can see the bouncing dreads at least. That one's right. On you.
I was still back from the TV from when Justin Jefferson made the one-handed 4th and a million catch, and I still hadn't left the kitchen yet. So, but yeah, no, it's AJ Green scores. But yeah, they get the ball to Hopkins, they get the ball to Rondale Moore in the right spots on the field, throwing on time. It was good to see those guys because I'm sure we were starting Hopkins everywhere, but it's good to see those guys still get there.
It was good to see James Conner find the end zone a couple of times. Meager rushing efficiency. We weren't really expecting a big rushing game here, so we love the 2 touchdowns. Another challenging matchup for him on the ground against San Francisco next Monday night in Mexico City. But, I mean, I'll take the dominating backfield usage and just deal with the inefficient games as they come.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we don't even care about it. Just give me fantasy points. Like, especially guys who've been out for 4 weeks, coming back. Give us the fantasy points. We got some catching up to do. A game in Mexico City. Can we get Germany, London, Mexico? Can we get some Champions League soccer over here? We're giving all of our games away. Give us something back here. We don't want any friendlies. All right, we want world-class competition soccer coming to America. But
sorry, everybody's wedged into Cotter right now.
Yeah, I guess so.
Cooper Kupp, by the way, buried the lead from this game. Ankle injury. I can't even pronounce it because I'm too distraught. Seems like he's going to miss some time. We're waiting to see the official diagnosis. The last thing is they don't think worst case scenario here, but that doesn't mean a best case scenario either. So it seems like he's probably going to miss multiple games, and we'll see exactly what the timeline is. The natural question is, who's the guy in his absence? The first answer is nobody, because this offense has been absolute garbage outside of Cooper Kupp this year. So nobody's going to be awesome in Cooper Kupp's spot going forward. Now, who's going to benefit? Probably Tyler Higbee. 8 targets, 8 catches, 73 yards against the Cardinals. He's been the most reliable bet for targets and, limited production beyond Cooper Kupp in this offense. Allen Robinson, probably a better bet for targets going forward. I wouldn't get excited about him, but maybe a little bit more usable than he has been usually. Ben Skoranek was the next wide receiver in line in yesterday's game. Van Jefferson didn't play until after Cooper Kupp left the game. So if you are in a situation where you need one of those guys, those are the guys, but don't get excited about anybody.
Yeah, this is so interesting. It's it's just a tale of two offenses right here. So you have a backup quarterback in Colt McCoy, who's back there throwing on time, slinging the ball to the guys that need to get the ball, DeAndre Hopkins, Rondale Moore. Then you've got Cooper Kupp with 3 catches for negative 1 yard before he got hurt. They couldn't get anything going with their backup quarterback to Cooper Kupp. The offense is completely broken. And so we're going to lose Cooper Kupp, and we're going to get Stafford back, and nothing's going to matter. Nothing's going to change. I mean, yeah, the targets have to go somewhere. You could flip a coin. It could be Skoronek. It could be Robinson. It's probably Higbee, even though he needs to stay in and block because the offensive line is terrible. It's just a mess. Robinson, I still have a bunch of Allen Robinson laying around, who I'll probably have to start because of all the other injuries, but I don't expect more than 6 to 8 targets and stuff like that. So they're going to spread it around, and they're going to be terrible.
Yep. Yep. So you might have to use some of them. There might be a couple more targets than usual. Nothing to get excited about. The backfield, also nothing to get excited about. We got Kyron Williams on offense for the first time this season, and he immediately passed Cam Akers because Sean McVay is just looking for somebody to run past Cam Akers in playing time. 16 snaps for Kyron Williams versus 35 for Darrell Henderson. Henderson doubled Williams's pass snaps. So Henderson was on the field a lot more as a receiver, but he saw one target to Williams's 3 because Sean McVay, for some reasons, like, oh, we got to have Henderson on the field a lot in passing situations. Just make sure you don't throw him the ball.
The other thing too, it's also hard to know when it comes to who's getting targets and who's doing, when you've got a quarterback like John Wolford in there, you want to really throw the game out as far as that type stuff's concerned. But then you see stuff like with the Cooper Kupp, where it's just you couldn't even get Cooper Kupp the ball. How, we almost can't even trust the numbers from these games. So, I mean, you can really throw it out because there was no Stafford. We'll know a little bit more next week when Stafford's back. But yeah, I mean, Henderson, six carries, Cam Akers, 6 carries, Kyron Williams, 1 carry. No one did much of anything. I think Henderson scored, saved the day if you had to start him. But yeah, this whole offense is just Super Bowl hangover. I don't understand.
And the rest of the season's been like this. It's like Darrell Henderson's on the field a lot in passing situations. So at some point the targets are coming. I mean, we're finishing week 10. The targets are not coming. They don't want to throw him the ball. So again, nothing to be excited about here. Those are the names that you need to know for whatever level.
That's right.
49ers 22, Chargers 16 to close things out. The biggest offensive storyline for fantasy here is Elijah Mitchell coming back from IR and immediately beating Christian McCaffrey 18-14 in carries, beating him in rushing yards. The 49ers traded a 2nd-round pick, a 3rd-round pick, a 4th-round pick in this upcoming NFL draft, and a 5th-rounder in the one after that. And they did that to get a running back that they immediately put behind Elijah Mitchell in rushing work, which, I thought that Kyle Shanahan was supposed to be the offensive genius. I don't know how much of a role he played in the trade and how much of it was the front office, but I mean, this is goofy usage and it could change next week, but it's very worrisome for Christian McCaffrey for fantasy that this is even a possibility, especially in the first game that Elijah Mitchell's back. I would say that if your trading window is still open in your league, go ahead and see if you can get top shelf compensation for McCaffrey, not unload for whatever you can get, but try to trade him as a top shelf commodity now before we get any more games to show that they're going to limit his usage.
I might be on the wrong side of this, but I don't mind them limiting Christian McCaffrey's usage. We want for fantasy and for them, they're trying to make a Super Bowl run. For fantasy, we want McCaffrey healthy during the playoffs. Now Mitchell hasn't played in 9 weeks, and he actually didn't look bad. I think a lot of those carries, so he out 18 carries to 14 carries. A lot of those were goal line carries. That was kind of his turn type deal. I mean, McCaffrey, 14 carries, 5 targets. I care more about the targets. Give me all those targets and give me that goal line work that he lost there to Elijah Mitchell. So that one drive where Mitchell's in there with the goal line, if that's McCaffrey, A, he probably scores. But B, we're not really talking about this whole situation. So maybe they just wanted to see what Elijah Mitchell had there. But if you give me 15, 16 carries and 5, 6 targets, I think you're going to be okay. I mean, it was running back 11 on the day. I don't know. I'd like to see them moving forward a little bit, how this rolls out. But, similar with Saquon Barkley, we don't want 30 freaking touches out of these running backs. They're not going to survive. So give me 20 to 22 touches for McCaffrey, and I'm happy. It's not going to give you that RB1 weekly upside, but at least you'll have a rock solid RB1 for the rest of the year rather than him getting hurt.
I mean, it seems like splitting hairs or nitpicking, but even if we had 18 McCaffrey carries versus 14 for Elijah Mitchell, I think that'd be different in this game. We had 24 opportunities for McCaffrey versus what would be 16 for Mitchell. I'd be like, all right, I get not running your guy into the ground, but for Mitchell to come back immediately and get more carries, I don't know. Maybe it was, hey, he's the hot hand in this one. You can make sense of it in real football terms. For fantasy, though, it's definitely worrisome that it's possible for Mitchell to get more carries in a game than McCaffrey. Like you said, he can certainly be fine on 14 carries a game and 6 targets a game, but if you can get top shelf compensation, I'd be willing to do it, depending on the package. Again, not saying unload McCaffrey for whatever the best offer is, but if you can get top shelf compensation, I'd be willing.
Yeah, the situation I would be terrified is Debo Samuel. That's the situation where it's like, oh my God, let's see what this looks like when everyone's healthy. You got Debo Samuel, four targets and 4 carries. By the way, there's another four carries going to somebody else. And then you've got, George Kittle with two targets. It's like, we were saying this going in, like, man, it's going to be tough for all these guys to get. It's exciting for Jimmy Garoppolo, who still only managed. I mean, I don't even know where he finishes as quarterback.
Rushing touchdown helped him.
That's right, of course. There's another. Yeah, that's right. Rushing touchdown. It was just kind of a weird game. But yeah, Jimmy G only finished, even with the rushing touchdown, finished just QB 17 because he needs a couple more weapons. But yeah, it was just kind of a weird game, but. Debo would scare me moving forward if he's only getting 4 targets.
I absolutely agree. Actually, Brandon Ayuk beat Debo Samuel in routes, targets, catches, and yards in this game. The last time that Debo beat Ayuk in targets was week 5. The last time that he beat Ayuk in catches or yards was week 4. So it's still weird, but it's past the point of being weird and well into trend territory. It's a worrisome time to be holding Debo Samuel. So I agree. He's somebody else that I would be looking to move right now. Certainly there's a chance that the team's like, all right, what are we doing with Debo? Let's get him the ball starting next week. And they turn it around against Arizona, but we can't bank on that after that long a stretch of things going in that direction.
Well, not only that, like, especially with a quarterback like Jimmy G, unless they score 50 points or something like that, like all these guys can't get there. So you're going to have a coach like Kyle Shanahan going into each week is going to figure out, all right, I've got a stud tight end. I've got 2 good receivers. I have good running backs, a stud, like where is the other team's weakness? And whatever that weakness is, he's going to use those players to attack that weakness, which is great coaching. But when you have a quarterback like Jimmy G, everyone's not really going to hit. So all that to say, like Debo Samuel is going to have his weeks where he goes crazy. I almost feel like what you want to do is like go to something like, go on Draft Sharks where they've got like the rest of season rankings as far as the defenses, and figure out like, hey, whoever they play, what's their weakness? If they're bad against receivers and good against running backs, well, maybe you start your Debos. And again, you're going to probably start these guys anyways, but maybe more for DFS, like attack what the other team isn't good at. Because I feel like that's probably what Shanahan's going to do moving forward. He doesn't care that George Kittle's amazing. If the tight end defense of the other team is really good, he'll just use Debo Samuel.
Well, this coming week not at Arizona, but against Arizona, they should have a defense that's soft against the pass and a little bit tougher against the run. So we'll see if we get any more for Debo there. And then after that, it's New Orleans. After that's Miami. So maybe that's a tight end spot. George Kittle, as you alluded to, very quiet, 2 targets, 1 catch in last night's game. Unfortunately, that stuff's going to happen because they want to run the ball and they have a bunch of dudes to get the ball to now. On the other side, Justin Herbert now is coming off 4 straight games of less than 6 yards per pass attempt, which is a terrible level for a guy who should be a star quarterback. And the first 2 of those 4 games still included Mike Williams being in the lineup. So a bad game against San Francisco. We found out afterward that the team is hoping to get either Mike Williams or Keenan Allen back for week 11, maybe both for that game against the Chiefs. We definitely need at least one of those guys back, probably even more so Mike Williams, to extend the yardage ceiling for Justin Herbert. Adam, if we do get that, checking that strength of schedule page again, Justin Herbert has the best remaining QB schedule. They already had their bye. So there's still time for him to be a difference maker in this fantasy season. But at the moment, it's getting to the point where it's difficult to trust him as a starter.
Yeah, I mean, no one has dealt with more injuries than Justin Herbert in his offense. I mean, Keenan Allen has the worst hamstring injury in the history of the world. Mike Williams is always hurt. He got hurt again this year for multiple weeks. Then you've got Gerald Everett, who gets hurt during this game, sees 2 targets. I mean, this offense with Eckler and Everett and Big Mike and Keenan Allen, it can be absolutely explosive. So, it's almost like a lost first half of the season for Herbert. But yeah, if we can get these pieces healthy for the playoff run for fantasy, if you're, still in it with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen on your team, like there's certainly, like you said, with the schedule, this could be a league winning type offense going into the fantasy playoffs.
Kansas City this week, at Arizona, at Raiders, then Miami after that. So we'll
It's
see where
beautiful.
we're at after those 4 games. But that's a nice stretch if we can get any healthy Chargers receivers back.
Absolutely.
And speaking of injuries, Gerald Everett, groin injury last night, cost him basically the second half. So we'll see if he's going to be available for that Kansas City game. But that's pretty much all I got from that game.
Yep.
Well, that's going to do it for this Week 10 recap edition of the podcast. Head over to draftsharks.com now. You can get more details on what happened with all of your key Week 10 players in the Shark Bites section. We will be updating our rest of the way rankings throughout today. Tomorrow, of course, brings our Week 11 projections because it's time then to move on to next week and see who we'll be able to use, who's going to help us and who won't. The rankings will be up by the middle of the day. We will have waiver wire recommendations for whatever format you play, and Free Agent Finder is live for you anytime, ready to display the top waiver options in your specific league as long as you sync it to draftsharks.com, whether you're looking for help this week, next week, or the rest of the season. So, for Adam Krautwurst and the entire Draft Sharks crew, I'm Matt Schauf saying thanks so much for swimming with us.